for the keynote speakers. We'll start with the CEO of Leatherback, Mr. Ochebhoya Ekpete, who will enlighten us on global banking and payments. Mr. Ochebhoya Ekpete.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here representing Leatherback. It's an exciting layout we have here. When I came in, I was very pleased to be meeting everyone in this room. I work for Leatherback as CEO, and some of the things that we do in the UK is enable MSBs and TPPs to be able to process remittance businesses, remittance transactions, and grow their business across the borders of the UK. Today, I'll be making a keynote on silos to networks, building infrastructure that enables global payments and banking. This, for me, is the heart of why we are all gathered here. We are all creators, builders, entrepreneurs that are powering cross-border business in one form, shape, or the other. My presentation is going to be, I'm not a technical person, it's going to be mostly on the breadth of cross-border business and the opportunities as opposed to debt. I'd like to start with the opportunity. FXC Intel puts global cross-border at about $890 trillion. Staggering number. But the exciting thing about this number is the number continues to grow. And what are those levers that drives the growth in these numbers? Some of the things I want to sort of touch on this evening. Today we see a significant growth in SMEs that are looking to do business across the borders of their local jurisdictions. You have businesses in the UK, for example, that want to do business outside the UK. How do they get paid? How do SMEs that are leveraging services or solutions outside the UK, how do they pay for those services? These are some of the issues or some of the challenges that makes the cross-border conversation very, very important. And this is why this particular cross-border, global cross-border business will continue to grow. There are many fronts and many ways to skin this particular topic. There are a lot of innovators creating within the stablecoin space. There are a lot of creators sort of working and collaborating with banks to ensure that money is moving smoothly. And of course, there is also the handshake between stablecoin and fiat. My presentation today will touch on some of these particular layers or options that we see partners, customers leveraging today, and I hope we're able to get or glean a few things from this topic and sort of segues into conversations that we'll be having in the subsequent sessions. The next big driver of global cross-border business essentially is e-commerce. E-commerce is still growing and is being shaped by artificial intelligence, which is shaping customer preferences, customer behaviors. That is one of the things that would drive cross-border business beyond the shores of the UK and across every other market where most of us play today. In the course of this presentation, I would start by just taking you through the current state of remittances or cross-border business or global cross-border transactions. I would walk you through the implications of the siloed networks that we have today. I would also paint a picture of what a connected network should look like. We'll look at some examples, and then we'll look at some pillars that will drive cross-border banking or payments. And of course, I will land my presentation with some of the work that we at Leatherback are doing to help small businesses and enterprises, process payments or do business beyond the shores of their local markets. Some of the obvious pain points of cross-border banking today. First one is a fragmented banking system. Banking, when you take a look at what is under the hood within transaction banking across the world, banking in the US is different from banking in the UK. is different from banking in Africa. Some of the challenges would sort of come to surface when you have a dispute. When you have a customer that has sent money and for some reason they lay the claim and they want those monies back, you begin to see the realities of the challenges that sort of come out of the simple arbitration process, right, which in some cases will take days and weeks to resolve. Why is that? Some of this is coming because we have multiple standards across different jurisdictions. We have frameworks that are operational in one market different from the other. We have regional rules that talk to each other locally, but when it comes to cross-border business, they fall apart. All of these create a major bonding and creates poor interoperability for the system. This translates to very expensive cross-border payment transactions. It makes our SMEs, it makes businesses take a very huge burden in terms of paying much more for a service that should typically cost less. So cross-border is very expensive because of some of these challenges I've highlighted here. Now, what do we as co-creators, how do we look at this problem? How do we dimension them? How should we position to help address some of these pockets of pain points that I already highlighted before? Before I get there, the implications of these siloed networks I mentioned earlier, number one is, as I highlighted, when you have an institution, for example, that has frameworks for monitoring money laundering, in the US, for example, and you have a separate institution in the UK with a separate framework that do not talk to each other, it creates a ground for money launderers, for fraudsters to propagate crime and to go fly under the radar without being detected. That is one of the pain points we see today when we have systems that don't talk to each other. The second one is SMEs are not able to scale globally. It's expensive, it's challenging. There is a lot of technical debt in infrastructure today within banks. When I talk to banks and you see the kind of infrastructure that banks use to power cross-border business, it creates a lot of challenges for fintech. Some of the technology are redundant. There needs to be investment in technology to help power the kind of cross-border, the smoothness or the swiftness of the cross-border business that we want to see and the kind of growth that we are anticipating. All of this makes launching products very challenging. Longer times for processing transactions. This is for fiat, by the way. So my business today is focused on fiat. I will touch on stablecoin just a bit. But some of the challenges we have with processing this transaction, the long time it takes to process disputed transactions for fiat is because of some of these things I've highlighted here. Different countries have become so great at creating frameworks within their local markets that help to control their monetary policies, help to control, the flow of funds within the market. But regulators are not paying attention to the cross-border side or how to build an efficient ecosystem that allows money and value to move across borders. These are some of the implications of the siloed networks that we face today. What does a connected system look like? In my view, a connected system is one where the regulator is co-creating with the banks and co-creating with fintechs to ensure that products, services, as it relates to cross-border business, moves smoothly, moves with trust, and creates trust within the system. Think about open banking and what it has done for account-to-account payments. Imagine that every institution in the world is compliant with ISO 20022, the structure of data that flows, that enables or powers how money flows from one institution to the other. Imagine it is standardized. Imagine how that would translate to a smoother flow of cross-border payments. Imagine how those efficiencies would flow into how services are priced. Some of the benefits of cross-border business I've highlighted here. I won't touch on them. I'll go straight to examples of networks that have been created that would help us sort of begin to think about and glean a few things that we should focus on as entrepreneurs and builders to help us shape how and what we are focusing on in our different enterprises. The first one is QRO interoperability. Thailand and Singapore were able to build an interoperable network on a QR code system. And this connected system had enables cross-border business between those countries to move very smoothly, payment seamless. In 2022, there was an agreement that was signed by most of the APAC nations to build or to collaborate on QR code interoperability. And for that region, this has enabled some of those markets to offer instant payments. This is one layer of interoperability that needs to exist to help our cross-border business really, really grow and help everyone in this room benefit in the process. The second big item to call out is identity. This is also a major big pain point for cross-border business. Today, I struggle with identifying customers within multiple jurisdictions. For example, I onboard a customer in Canada. Do I need to re-onboard that customer in the US? Do I need to re-onboard the customer in the UK? Can we have a system where the identity or the eKYC is interoperable? Some of these systems are being created by partners I have listed on my slides. How do we do this at scale? How do we leverage this infrastructure? These are some of the things that would power the future of cross-border business. Now, finally, it's probably the most exciting topic today when it comes to cross-border business is stablecoins. Now, when you think about stablecoins, there is still some gaps within that flow. We have major players who have built a rail that allow you to on-ramp and do your on-chain exchange, but there's still a struggle when it comes to off-ramp. How can regulators support this process to ensure that the banks, the major players, the banks are baked into this process and they provide liquidity for this process? Imagine banks off-ramping stablecoins. Imagine how that will revolutionize the cross-border business. Imagine how much liquidity we'll have in the system if banks are able to off-ramp stablecoins. Imagine the kind of innovation that will sit on top of that working with the banks and how much easier it would be to move monies across borders. I'll spend a bit of time here. So here are some of the pillars that, in my view, would drive the future of global cross-border banking and payments. The first one is having a unified data system. Today in Nigeria, for example, the central bank has launched a white paper that is encouraging all banks, Fintechs, to adopt the ISO 20022 framework. That framework, once implemented, is going to improve how banks, Fintech, speak to each other from a technology standpoint. It's going to improve how arbitrations, how disputes are managed between local banks and international banks. It's going to power cross-border business. The second key pillar is how do we streamline our compliance frameworks in a manner that is not a burden for business. Today, my business in the UK is very familiar with anti-money laundering rules. When I speak to a bank in America, their focus is on the Bank Secrecy Act. Even though you might argue that they are both very similar, but the lingua, the frameworks are different. How do we harmonize this? Harmonizing these two frameworks is going to be a major game changer from a standpoint of onboarding with banks. It's going to change the way banks interact with fintechs that are not within the UK or just within the US. This is a major changer as well. Technology, I mentioned earlier, there needs to be a refresh in technology. Today, redundant technology makes it very difficult to create or innovate. So as we create or innovate, we need to have some of these pillars at the back of our minds. They also provide opportunities, right, for us to be able to change the ecosystem, to transform how we process cross-border business, on how we do business. Number 4 is blockchain. There was a lot of conversation about how blockchain would change the entire system. But today, some of the things we are seeing is how blockchain would sort of be interoperable with fiat. That, in my view, is probably the biggest use case that will transform the next few years. How can entrepreneurs plug into this particular process of on-ramping, on-chain transmitting of payments or transactions and off-ramping of transactions? We have big players within this space. We have a lot of white papers within there. I think this is going to be a game changer. Global Interoperable Digital Identity Network I mentioned earlier. This is also one of the big pillars that will drive global cross-border business across the world. Anti-money laundering, fraud, and all devices continue to be a major pain point for businesses, for individuals. These frameworks would help to manage some of these gaps. And of course, open banking and standards has done so much, but we also need to think about how to leverage more of open banking to power cross-border business. And finally, cybersecurity and trust, which is absolutely critical for our next phase of growth. At Leatherback, some of the things we've built is helping SMEs, helping enterprises address the challenges with managing receivables outside their local markets, helping SMEs to pay vendors in other markets. What we've done is to build a low-code API that allows these vendors to be able to collect monies and also leveraging our multi-currency capability in the UK, in Canada, in the US. We're able to enable SMEs, PSPs, remittance businesses to collect currencies, local currencies in those markets into their wallets. And we've built this over the years, and we continue to expand that offering. Today, we have licenses in the UK, we have licenses in Canada, we have licenses in Nigeria, we have partnerships in India, Pakistan, licenses in Nepal, and much more. We are opening up more markets in Africa to be able to power that cross-border trade. These are some of the exciting things that the team at Leatherback are building. I'm very excited to chat more about them. I'll be seated at the back. Thank you again. Thank you very much.